House Speaker Joseph Shekarchi returns to our broadcast, fresh from wrapping up the session. He's joining us remotely. Mr. Speaker, nice to have you on again.
Always a pleasure to be on your show, Gene. Nice to be here with you, as always.
All right, I appreciate it. Listen, let's get right to it. You supported passage of this Safe Clinics bill, where a drug abuser could take his own illegal drugs, go in and shoot up under supervision. There's maybe a nurse there or a clinician to make sure they don't overdose and die in the streets alone. Would you want one of those places in your district in Warwick?
I would not want anything in anybody's community unless the local community supported it. And the legislation you're talking about came over from the Senate, and it was the House that it put caveats, or what I would call guardrails, on it. If you read the legislation, we're not approving any of these sites anywhere. We're letting each community, each city and town council make the decision whether they want one, and if they want one, where they want one. We are also not using any state funds whatsoever in this, or any taxpayer funds. This is all going to be privately funded. This is a 2-year, 24-month experiment. It's a private program to see if this works and see what kind of benefits it has. It has worked in other communities successfully, namely Toronto, and we're looking at this as a way to another tool in the tool belt to help us with the war on drugs.
Right.
So the way the legislation is written, Gene, it's very important. This has not been said either on the radio or on TV or anywhere in the media, but we're not approving any of these sites. We're letting cities and towns, if they want to. Your community may want one. My community may not want. We're letting each city and town make that decision. This is enabling legislation.
Right.
But I did support, I think, the idea to test it and to study it and to look at it. It's a good idea.
Right. By the way, I did mention that repeatedly. It's up to the local towns to accept or reject. In fact, it came up in conversation with Senate President Ruggiero. He's getting a little heat for his answer. He voted to allow for this. Yes, you can have them. Think outside the box. The question is, where did the box go? He doesn't want the box in his district. And I don't know, do you want the box in your district? Because if you're going to allow it, you're going to have to take it too.
Well, it's not that whether I want it. I want to let my local city and town council, my town council president is my councilman, Steve McAllister in Warwick. Yeah. I'll let him and the town council make the decision. If they think there's a need for it in Warwick and there's a proper location, then I would support it. If they don't, I would support that decision. That's why the legislation was crafted in the way it was, so that each community can make that decision. It wasn't Capitol Hill, Smith Hill, or the State House making a decision, forcing it in some one person's district or address. We let the local community. And by the way, if 39 cities and towns don't want it, we don't do it.
Okay, I understand, but I want to. I understand. 2 or 3 communities on it. I understand Pawtucket has expressed some interest in it. Possibly Providence has expressed some interest in it. So if those communities, and even one in the East Bay has expressed community. I can't remember it, but during the testimony, and a lot of the advocates who wanted us to explore this idea said there were communities. That was my first question: which community would want to host it? And you'd be surprised. There are communities that already provide these kinds of services to a different degree. Now, you said, people come into a safe place and do their drugs. They'd be counseled. They'd see medical professionals. They would be tested. They'd be counseled. They'll be treated. The idea is to help get them off drugs, not to provide a safe haven to do it. We may provide a safe haven temporarily to get them in because we're going to give them treatment as well. It's a unique, I know it's thinking out of the box, but I think we need to think out of the box when it comes to the war on drugs. Listen, I'm very sympathetic to the politicians. You're faced with a crisis. People are dying. Nobody wants anybody to die on the street, but you have to listen to constituents too. So I'm hearing from you that if Warwick okays it, you're okay with it coming to your city.
Absolutely, yes. If the city council were to approve this, I would not object in any way, shape, or form. Okay. And I appreciate that making that point known in your broadcast, because I haven't heard it anywhere else in the regular media. So thank you, Gene.
No, it came up several times on the radio. That's how I got into the question with Senate President Ruggiero. Also, Blake Filippi, the Republican, right of center, but he went along with this. And again, he said, let's try something to save lives. It's an experiment. I do want to point out, though, that if somebody goes in that clinic and shoots up under supervision, they're not obligated to sit for counseling. They could leave under the influence of drugs and get in the car and kill someone. Unfortunately, it's not a neat package that we can wrap up and say it's a perfect system. It's not, right, Speaker?
No, clearly you are 100% correct, but they could do what you just said, whether we're in that center or not. The difference is, in that center, there are medical professionals who will hopefully attempt to counsel them, not
to do what you just said, but if they're taking drugs illegally, they can do it anywhere, at their home, their office, in their car, anywhere they want. So we're looking at this idea as a way to attack a problem differently. I want to point out there are no taxpayer funds used in this, and it's a 2-year, 24-month pilot program. And if we don't have good results, we terminate the program. By the way, the program automatically terminates. Yeah. It doesn't renew automatically. We'd have to reauthorize it only if it works, only if we have real data to show that it's effective and it works. And if we have data that shows the opposite, then I don't think this program would get renewed.
Okay, let's move on to another topic. Just this week, we're going to get to the budget and everything else, which is sort of old business, but new business is the governor just vetoed a registry of Airbnbs. In other words, if you're going to rent on a short term to strangers coming in, we want it registered. The state wants to keep track. The governor says the Division of Taxation already knows that they're being rented out. That's enough. Let the locals deal with it. Senate President Ruggieri is very angry over that. We just had a murder in Newport. I know the mayor of Newport wanted this separate registry. Where do you come down on that? There may be a veto override on this. What are you hearing?
Yeah, there may be a veto override. I have to talk to the sponsor of the House version, Lauren Carson. I am disappointed. I put out a statement with the Senate president yesterday. We took a lot of testimony on this particular issue. And unfortunately, what happens is a lot of people, when they look at review legislation, they look at the first version of it and not the last version of it. We took into a lot of those concerns. People were afraid that we were going to mandate them to put, commercial sprinkler grade fire apparatus in their homes. They were concerned about all different forms of scare tactics that a lot of these platforms, sent emails out to their neighbors, contact your state representative, contact your senator. Mm-hmm. But in the end, it's a simple registration, just as you said, James, so people know, cities and towns know where they are. Massachusetts has a registration. I want to point out it was not regulation, but registration. It's just so we know who's renting who into a neighborhood, because they are, in essence, hotel rooms.
Right.
And when you rent them out to the public, sometimes you're in a residential neighborhood with a lot of children, and you don't know what type of person is renting that room in a hotel, which is really your next-door neighbor's house. So we want people to be aware. It's a notice provision. It wasn't a lot to ask. I know DVR was not in favor of the additional work that they had to do to enable it, but the cities and towns supported this very strongly, as the overwhelming majority of my membership. I think it passed 60-9 when it was approved earlier this month, or last month in June. Yeah. So I think if we were to override the veto, the votes would be there. I'm going to wait for the formal veto message. I'm going to talk to my Senate counterpart, the president, and we'll come together and see what we're going to do on this. But I would point out that this supported overwhelmingly by both chambers and the League of Cities and Towns, who really stressed that they wanted this tool. And it's a notice. That's all it is. It's not regulation.
I understand. By the way, we're doing a Zoom today, so sometimes our transition could be a little rough, but I'm hearing what you're saying, and this is not ideal, but we have to move ahead. This leads me to an interesting question. You just gave Governor McKee $2 billion more than he asked for in the budget. You're making it easy for him. And he wouldn't give you the Airbnb registry? A piddly little thing like that? What's at play here, Mr. Speaker?
Well, first of all, let's talk about the $2 billion in 1 minute, but I don't look at it that way. I don't make a budget decision and then expect something in return. Each issue, and I have a lot of respect for the governor, the role he plays, and any governor for that matter, and the role they play, as I'm sure he does with the General Assembly. So it wasn't like I gave him $2 billion. Now we'll go approve all the House bills. It doesn't work that way, Gene. I know to some people they think it works that way, but we actually have a great personal relationship, as we all share that same one with the Senate president. But each issue is individual. So the Senate president and I don't agree on issues, and I may agree with the governor and vice versa. Okay. But at the end of the day, we make a decision based on the $2 billion you're talking about. It's very misleading, because you say, oh, we gave $2 billion extra the governor asked for. A lot of that money was federal money that, for example, enhanced unemployment benefits. When someone goes out on unemployment and they get the federal enhancement, the federal government doesn't send them the check. The federal government sends the check to the state of Rhode Island, to the Division of Unemployment, and then we, in turn, send that money to the Rhode Island resident who's unemployed. We are acting as a pass-through. So a lot of that extra money that, some people are concerned, the budget went up, well, that was federal money specifically in our programs, and the state acted as a pass-through, as it has to. All money that gets appropriated has to go through the General Assembly. Also, the city and town money, the CDBG grant money, a lot of money was given toward education that had to, again, go through the state budget as well. So that federal money came to us with very strict restrictions on how and what it could be used for, and we had to disseminate it accordingly. And that's why the budget was enhanced above the previous budget and above what the governor asked for.
Okay.
And quite frankly, I don't think the state of Rhode Island should turn down any federal money. If the federal government is going to give the state of Rhode Island money, and congressional delegation, Jack Reed, Sheldon Whitehouse, Jim Langevin, David Cicilline do a phenomenal job. They are all, boxing above their weight. As I like to say, Rhode Island gets its fair share and then some because of them. I don't want to turn that money down. I want that money to go to Rhode Island.
Okay.
I don't want to send it back to Washington or go to Texas or Idaho or California. If we're getting federal money, I want to use it in the state of Rhode Island.
All right, let's hold it there. Let's take a quick break, and then we'll dig a little more into where this money is going. Speaker Shekarchi is going to stay with us for one more segment. Welcome back. House Speaker Joe Shekarchi is my guest. Let's do a kind of a lightning round. We have so many topics to get to here, but we fleshed out a good portion at the beginning. We have a hospital system that's a mess. The state hospitals, often the last resort for our neediest people. It's a mess. Now, there's money for that, but there may not be a plan. What are you hearing, Speaker?
I think the governor's released some broad-based themes of what he thinks the plan will look like. We are waiting in the General Assembly for the governor's plan, and we will have public hearings and a full public vetting on it, and we'll stand ready to do our part of that. Let's not forget that these are the most vulnerable Rhode Islanders. These are the Rhode Islanders who need our assistance the most. And members of the House Oversight Committee and the House Finance Committee will do a deep dive and make sure that we address that issue. But ultimately, it's an executive function, and we're going to wait for the governor to give us our plan. But whether that plan comes this week or next month, we're ready to work in action along with the governor to implement that plan in the best interest of the patients of Zambarano Hospital.
What's the plan to fix DCYF? It's been a mess under several governors, several speakers, too.
DCYF has remained a troubled agency for as long as I can remember. And part of that is that, unfortunately, they take care of troubled youth as well.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, most of the time, it's not the youth's fault. It's the circumstances they find themselves in. So through our Finance Committee and our Oversight Committee, we had a series of hearings regarding DCYF and the care. And also the child advocate, Jennifer Griffin, who was a big advocate for children under the care of DCYF. And it was the membership at the Republican, it was a bipartisan effort, Republican and a Democratic effort, and it spanned the whole globe, the whole spectrum of the most conservative and the most progressive members of the General Assembly all wanted to see increased funding to DCYF. So we had the funds this year. We were able to give them an additional $10 million to hire an additional 90 FTEs. That's full-time equivalents. Those are 90 positions. We are very hopeful that DCYF uses those for frontline workers, not necessarily top or middle-level management people, but the actual case workers who interact with the children, the families, the foster settings, the investigators. That's where we think we can do the most hope. DCYF is on a path for accreditation. We stand by to assist them and to monitor that plan. In addition to that, we're going to see how they do on this. We're going to continue to have oversight hearings through the summer on this. And then if the need be, we'll consider an audit at some future date as well. But at the end of the day, we have provided resources more than they've ever seen. I have gotten letters and congratulations from the workers at DCYF, from the caseload workers, from the union, from the advocates outside, all very grateful the House made this huge investment into DCYF. It's all about the children, the troubled children under the state care. We have to give them the best opportunity to succeed, and that's what we did in this budget.
All right, let's keep going. So that's unfinished business, pending business, the hospitals, DCYF, still no teacher's contract in Providence. The state took it over. The governor is largely running the system de facto through his education commissioner, but you oversee a lot of the money that goes into the Providence. In fact, most of the money that goes to Providence comes from the state. Are you dissatisfied with the way things are going? Do you think the Crowley Act should be invoked and just give the teachers a contract and end it?
No, I think I'm going to give the governor a chance. I have been in communications. I want to, thank the governor. Both he has briefed the Senate President and I expect the contract very shortly. The governor has reshuffled his side of the negotiation table. He's been much more involved personally. I would not be surprised if this gets resolved in very short order. I don't have an exact time, but I expect this to be resolved very shortly. The governor's working very hard. I know it's a top priority of his So the jury's still out, but I'm hopeful that we'll come to a resolution in short order.
Well, you're hearing something I'm not hearing. So you think within a couple of weeks you're going to get news on this? You're going to have a deal?
I wouldn't say the word couple of weeks. I think it's short time. It may be July, it may be August, but I think the governor will have a contract resolution. That's my understanding. He's been working very hard. He's got Tony Alfonso on his very talented attorney leading the negotiations. Tony's briefed the Senate President, myself, and he's confident that he can resolve the outstanding issues, like I said, hopefully before the school year starts.
All right, let's go to other unfinished business. There was supposed to be a review of the police officers' Bill of Rights. It didn't happen. Where do you stand with that? Are you going to come back in special session and take another look at that, or is that something that's just going to stay the way it is?
No, we're working very hard. First of all, let me tell you that that's a very important issue, and we worked very hard on that with a lot of stakeholders, the police union, the police chiefs, the advocates, the sponsors, the governor's office, and we thought we were very close to a resolution. Unfortunately, we just couldn't get everybody together. But I want to point out that another big, very important issue were body cameras, which we were able to,
yes,
again, put a lot of time, a lot of effort behind it. We were able to resolve that. And I think we're the only state in the union that will fully fund body cameras for any municipality that wants them. That was a big achievement. And more important than I honestly think that one of the most important things we've done in the session, body cameras are the police want the body cameras, the community wants the body cameras. I think it's important that we all, whenever there's an altercation or there's an incident, that we have unbiased video, sometimes even video and audio, to resolve it, come to a conclusion that's proper for everybody.
All right, we've got about 2 minutes left, so let's get to more unresolved issues, maybe coming back in special session to address legalizing marijuana. What's taking so long? To the right, Massachusetts, to the left, Connecticut, depending on whether you're looking north or south, and we're the sourdough in the middle. Why not fast enough?
Well, because I want to do it right, Jan. I think it's very important that we do it right. There's a lot of advocates, not universal, and everybody wants to legalize marijuana to begin with. There are many stakeholders. The insurance industry is opposed to it. The medical community is opposed to it. A lot of the educators are opposed to it. But nevertheless, you're right. It's here. It's all around us. First of all, we have a lot of cultivators here in the state. We have a lot of dispensaries here. The state's about to license another 6 additional dispensaries, I think, in the month of August. It's very important that we do this right. The proposals that I have seen, primarily from the Senate and from the governor, are very divergent. Some of the proposals reduce the revenue. Some of the for the state. Some of the proposals create a monopoly. Give us the license to sell, and by the way, don't let anybody else sell.
Okay.
So we need to do this, and we need to do it right. But I point out that if anybody needs marijuana for medical purposes, it's very readily available. And if anybody wants to use it for recreational purposes, I think a lot of people are already doing it. I just think when the state sanctions something, it needs to be done right. And it's the same philosophy. You talked about the Policeman's Bill of Rights a minute ago. We're going to work over the summer on these issues.
1 minute. Go ahead, wrap it up. We just got the warning on the computer. Go ahead.
If we can come to conclusion, we'll come back and resolve these issues. But just because we're not meeting in session every day doesn't mean the work is stopped. We're going to continue to work on the very important issues.
Okay. All right. Well, you also have to come back possibly and deal with a fight over driver's licenses for illegals. I've got about 30 seconds, a hard 30. Listen, you had a fire at your law office. There's no explanation for that. Are you concerned that somebody set that fire? Are you satisfied with the answer that you may never know? Just take 20 seconds and go. I can't let you go without answering that.
No problem. I really don't want to comment the specifics. I have met with the police and the authorities. They're still under investigation. They're professionals. I trust them, and we'll let the process play itself out.
Very good. House Speaker Joseph Shekarchi, it's nice to have you on. I think we covered a lot of ground, but there's more room left. We'll have you on again.
Thank you, sir. Have a great day.
You too. And thank you. That's 10 News Conference, the #1 and longest running political show.